My work in the Offing show here at the Turner Contemporary is called Old Town, and it's a film that kind of explores the idea of space, and in particular this kind of idea that liminal space can be functional and it can be magic and it can be a poem or a facilitator for both like the fact and the fiction. And the kind of spirit of the film is very rooted in places like Hastings or kind of places that feel like on the outskirts or on the fringe of the UK. And the kind of origin of Old Town is that it was once a club called Oceana, which for me felt like a very personal starting point, kind of like reflecting on a childhood time and like a teenage time, and the ways that foam parties and club culture existed in that space and in that time, and where those spaces are now. So Old Town operates as a sort of poem between those different spaces and those different origins. So for me, In The Offing means that space between the magic and the real, and I think somewhere like the sea carries that. And so I kind of took the phrase and transformed it into this phrase, Old Town, which becomes, it becomes a movie. Like, it's that line and that bridge between the two spaces. I made Old Town in a community centre, and then I also shot the last sequence in Hastings. And I made it with a whole crew and cast of good friends and collaborators, and it was essentially a series of workshops with my movement director Bianca Scout and music sessions with my collaborator Joseph Effie. And it happened in sort of a journey between workshopping the characteristics that I believe exist in this space I've created, Old Town, and the sound design of creating this really textural kind of love letter to Old Town, and this idea that a character is walking along the sea looking for their angel that they found down in Oceana. And it's kind of like this web between these different sections. One thing that I think I seem to have as a hierarchical component is definitely thinking about the sound before I think about the visuals. And I think that comes from finding a lot of connection to music before I find the work. And so the sound design comes in kind of like layers. I think there's almost 100 layers to the Old Town score. And those are made up of parts made by a choir called Muzak Choir, vocals and lyrics made between myself and Michael, and then also this kind of heavily glitched, bassy rooted piece of music, and it's just a stacking of these elements that make Old Town. I would say my relationship to the British seaside culture is that being someone that was brought up between Cardiff in Wales and Bristol in the southwest, I immediately thought of memories linked to places like Barry Island, and also places like Weston-super-Mare, places that are full of so much like glitz and glamour and make a whole amazing kind of painting of the mishmashness of what the UK becomes. And I think Old Town does that as well. It's kind of this, it's like a super layered painting, and it never really catches the action. It kind of snaps it before it's unraveled. And I think just like being on a ride at the seaside on a roller coaster, you kind of are whipped around and then looped back round and sent upside down, and I kind of wanted to take that approach with the edit as well. But also places like Margate, places like Hastings definitely fed into the narrative and the tone of the work. There's this kind of like folkiness to them, a kind of like 21st century folky, hyper-realistic video game of what this place is, and I don't think I have an answer for it. It's more of a feeling.